The Wuzzles by KraussAudioBooks. From the Monthly Macabre magazine, June 1904 edition. In rural upstate New York, there is a mountain town called Lexington. In that town there was, until recently, a dilapidated building. This is what remains of a journal recently found inside of the home. The town hired a demolition crew to remove the abandoned skeleton of a house, and a construction worker, who happens to be a loyal patron of the Monthly Macabre, picked up the book on a whim, owing to the elegant binding and cover which stood out in the wreckage of the home. After he perused the thing, he immediately mailed it to me. It is a kind gesture like this which reminds me of my good fortune to do what I love while providing titillating tales of terror to my dear friends and patrons. Most of the book was damaged, and unfortunately for us, completely illegible. However, the last few entries have survived the test of time, and I assume it was written by Mr. Jonathan Studebaker himself, though it is impossible to know for sure. According to the public record, the house was purchased by one Mr. Studebaker in 1804. According to the accounts of neighbors, he and his wife were reclusive and unfriendly. They were rarely seen in public, and they do not seem to have had any friends. It has been suggested that Mrs. Studebaker was the beneficiary of an inheritance which afforded the pair a simple and hermetic lifestyle. Over time, the house fell into disarray, disrepair, and then full dilapidation. As it turns out, the Studebakers must have abandoned the residence, because the last sighting of them was in 1843. I do not know what to make of the whole ordeal, so I put it forth to you, dear reader, to judge for yourself. Please mail me your thoughts. As always, the most interesting responses and theories will be included in next month's issue. First entry, January 14th, 1844. Well, it is done all right. What is done is done. No use second-guessing a thing all the way around, just because it all happened in such and such an unpleasant manner. You cannot change anything at all about how certain things did or did not transpire. Decisions must be made. Certain actions need taking, etc., etc. It is prudent now that I keep my wits about me, and live the life that I am destined to live, jubilant in my great peace and comfort. Reminding myself of this, I now feel a wave of quiet exaltation washing over my skin and hair. So, what is to be done then with newfound freedom? What does any man do with freedom? Well, I know what I am doing with it anyhow. I have my cubes, which have been long neglected. Previously, I just did not have the time to take proper care of them. I love my cubes dearly, and I am tickled over the prospect of spending ever greater amounts of time in their care and affection. The pantry is filled with provisions, and I have already chopped enough lumber to last for days. I am positively giddy thinking about my cubes, and I must write fast so I can finish this endeavor and return to my cubes in the shortest possible interval. Another positive stroke is that the winter has killed off all of the last remaining Wuzzles. This brings me great relief. I am off to my cubes now, but I must stay vigilant about recording my thoughts. It is not proper for a man to have no friends. Even an old grump like me can admit it. So we must retain our special bond of shared trust and correspondence. January 15th, 1844. Slow day today. It is so quiet here when I sit down and do nothing at all. Earlier I cooked sausage and parsnips. I drank wine and played the piano. The house is getting quite a bit messy now. I must remember to find the soap and try to clean the dishes. Anyways, the good news is I am delighted with my cube time. I could write 100 pages on this, but my love for the cubes is not something that will ever change, and thus there is no productive reason to account for my passion in any great detail. Unfortunately, I had to go down to the cellar today to double-check the lock on the oak door and grab some parsnips from the pantry. My peace was disrupted by an unpleasant uproar behind that old oak door. The locks were fine, so I got my parsnips and promptly returned upstairs. I am now enjoying my quiet over a cup of tea with raspberry jam. Future days will contain an uninterrupted peace, and I await the future with fierce anticipation. January 20th, 1844. There is good news and bad news. The good news is that I can now enjoy the quiet that was promised to me by myself so long ago. It has been a long time coming. Oh, yes, indeed. It is true now. So true. And it is all I ever imagined. Just quiet altogether. Now for the bad news. I have been in a state of hopelessness and despair for about a week, and have scarcely been able to enjoy this newfound quiet. I broke one of my cubes, dropped it right on the floor, and the subsequent feelings of self-pity are completely drowning me today, and possibly every day forevermore. It wasn't my fault. It was the damn Wuzzles. They're back. I suppose the snowstorm has brought the last of them out of their deep domains and in search of the great warmth of my domicile. I was lifting a cube to examine it when I realized there was a Wuzzle right on the other side of it. The thing leaped at me, and I dropped the cube on the floor. I have not even picked it up. So great is my grief. I hate Wuzzles. They are filthy little vagabonds, parasites, whose chosen sustenance is not even blood, but dust and mold. Wretched vermin. I was never fast enough to kill them myself, and I must admit, my bravery completely falters when I see one of those beasts. I begin to perspire, and my knees feel like they will positively buckle under my feeble weight. There is positively nothing I can do about this, besides wait them out, and try to avoid them at all costs. Now I suppose I must just live with them, or rather, outlive them. They will all freeze out as they do every winter. This is certain. They must feel victorious, now that they cannot be crushed by the dexterous blow from a slipper or a newspaper. But how can they know? Well, of course they know, I suppose, because they are quite literally evil incarnate. I saw another one when I checked the cellar. I hope God takes out the little freaks soon, so I can enjoy my well-deserved peace. January 22nd, 1844. They are multiplying. It makes no sense at all, but they are. I have seen them in the corners, under a table, and God forbid it, I even found one in my bedroom. It was just sitting on my desk and staring at my bed. It was a big beast, too, the biggest I've ever seen. Why? How could this happen? I venture to think I could have anticipated this sort of problem and hired a cat to take care of this kind of thing. But how could I have known this would happen? It defies science and nature. The Wuzzles always die off by January. That is how it has always been. It makes no earthly sense. I have this picture of a Wuzzle that was drawn by my wife long ago. I don't know what crawled up in her stupid brain to motivate her towards such a foul undertaking, and I never understood her fascination with these pests. I am putting that picture right here, so that I do not have to be alone with the Wuzzles. Yes, now you must share in the knowledge of their repugnance, and I feel less alone. Unlike other types of crickets, the Wuzzles are completely silent. They respond to changes in light, and when a shadow passes over them, they jump towards you instead of away. Such designs are indubitably of Luciferian origin, as such creature could not have been created by a just and merciful God. The babies are about the size of a penny, but the alpha males can be the size of a silver dollar. They have long antennae, which twitch and feel about, scanning my home for meals of dust, cloth fibers, or mold. Cruelest of all is that tall hind leg, for which they receive the moniker camel crickets. That foul and spiny leg inflicts primordial terror upon me. I have felt it. It is prickly against the skin. They are godless, and they are quite fast, and they can jump as high as an average man's shoulders. Cruel fate that my nose reaches the height of the average man's shoulders, and these Wuzzles have been known to leap up and hit me in the face. I went down to the pantry today to retrieve some potatoes, and kept my eyes straight as to avoid gazing at any of them. Such was my thinking. They can do no physical harm to a human, so if I don't see them, then they are not inflicting any mental damage upon me, and I will be undamaged overall. However, as I passed through the damp cellar, the light of my lamp was cast upon that oak door. I tried to resist looking, but the urge to gaze at the door was more of an impulse than a decision. I saw such a horrible sight as I have ever seen in my 62 years. The door looked like a leper, covered in brown sores. Such was my impression at seeing so many of the little monsters marked along the door, observing me, or crawling and leaping in the light of my lamp. Most horrible of all, I looked down at the gap between the door and the dirt floor, and I saw a veritable congregation of the demons. They are coming from behind the door. Today I will steel myself and venture back down to the cellar and to my pantry to procure my provisions for as long as I possibly can. I think a great snowstorm is coming. I always said I could feel it in my bones when a big storm is on the way. A certain personage never believed me, but I can't help it if, of course, I feel a storm coming in, and then it is blown off course and avoids us entirely. This one will be dastardly, I am sure of it. Luckily, such a frost should completely knock out the Wuzzles from this earthly realm. I will even avoid lighting the stove if that is what is necessary to freeze them out, and put an end to this fresh hell. For now, I must keep myself sane and try to ignore the beasts, though it is difficult given their proclivity to guerrilla warfare and ambush. Just this morning, I was reaching for the soap to clean those dishes, and one of them began leaping all around the closet. It banged about, thrashing from wall to wall, until it finally landed right on the nape of my neck. I swatted so hard at the sinner that I hurt myself. I must resume my search for the soap tomorrow, after I am well rested. I am so sick over the whole thing that I am barely enjoying my cubes. I must try to focus this evening. It is quite difficult to focus, as my faculties are constantly being assaulted by the jumping of a Wuzzle here, or the strange sounds coming from the basement. It reminds me of the sound of the Wuzzle jumping about in the closet, banging around, except on a far greater scale. It is a positive infestation, but I must guard against such unpleasantries, as I am, of course, destined to now enter upon my era of peace and contentment. This shall pass. January 29th, 1844. I am at a loss. I am being punished. I understand this clear enough. Since I last wrote in you, a terrible blizzard has swept across my land, and the snow must be piled 5 feet high. I cannot exit my home at all. I am now a prisoner, and the inmates have taken over the asylum. After I wrote the last entry, I swallowed some vodka for courage and ventured to the cellar to retrieve as many provisions as I could. It was quite hard to even walk through, with the little brown beasts flicking and whizzing all about. They leaped onto me, as if in a coordinated effort, and I shook violently to knock them off. I also heard some malignant knocking noise coming from behind the old oak door, and I watched as dozens of Wuzzles crawled out from underneath it. I was hardly able to get any food upstairs. In my violent reaction to the Wuzzles, I did drop quite a few items. I ran out of food days ago, and have been fasting now for a couple of days. If only I was heavier, I could fast for long and wait out this blizzard and escape this house. However, that is no longer a possibility. I am weak, and my body needs food. My house is now fully infested with Wuzzles. They crawl over my body as I try to sleep. I wrap myself in my quilt, but they find their way underneath, and they try to enter my clothing and rest on my bare skin. They try to burrow in my ears and nose. Of course, I have hardly slept. If I do happen to fall asleep, I am awoken in a choke, as my nostrils have become clogged with a few of the baby creatures. I have lost all concept of keeping time, as the snow wall blocks the sun from my view, and I cannot achieve a full sleep. I cannot even open a drawer or pantry without being confronted with dozens of Wuzzles jumping stupidly in my direction. They get stuck in my hair, and they crawl in my ears.
Moreover, they are much bigger now than any Wuzzles I have ever known. Some of them are as large as an apple. I have never felt such apprehension as when I round a corner and see a new, larger Wuzzle than I've ever seen before, sitting and staring with its large hump leg protruding towards the ceiling. Even now as I write, I must brush them off my hand and page. I am in a constant state of anxiety, and my life has lost all light and hope. Now I understand what must be done. I know she is behind the oak door, waiting for me, calling me, forcing me to come. The bumping noises from the cellar are unceasing, and as I try to sleep through the night, I can hear her bumping away. So that's it then. All is lost anyway. I have been robbed of heat, food, and sleep. I have no provisions. I live in unceasing terror, and with little grasp on reality. So now I will go and open the oak door and confront whatever it is that the devil has prepared for me to face. Goodbye for now, and if I can, I will report my findings after all is said and done.